I'm Jennifer Bilbrey, and this is On Our Minds, a podcast and vlog about psychotherapy in Austin, Texas. Today, I'm interviewing Dave Kaplowitz. He's an Austin-based psychotherapist specializing in couples and group work. We'll talk about the unique way he works, and we'll also get to talk about narcissism. Dave, where I'd like to start today is talking about feelings. A very kind of stereotypical place to start as therapists. So what I want to ask about is how helpful it is to talk about feelings in therapy, but also how much resistance there is to that. And how, especially in the beginning, when you ask that question, there's so much stereotypes around a therapist asking, how are you feeling or what are you feeling? That I'm just curious about that and how you introduce that, how you talk about why it's important.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer, because my belief is that most people that come to therapy because they're having difficulty dealing with difficult feelings and emotions.
Yes. Yeah, most of my clients struggle with this too.
Yeah. And so, people don't usually come into therapy thinking that is one of their problems. So how to introduce it really depends on the person, the couple, the group. The first thing I don't do is I don't ask how you're feeling. Because that is such a stereotypical question. It either evokes sort of dismissive, experiences, or most people when they think they're talking about feelings, they're really talking about ideas and judgments. Like, I feel that you're not a very good partner.
Right. Not I'm angry.
Yes. Yeah. Not I'm angry or I'm hurt or I'm mad or I'm sad or I'm lonely. Yeah. Right. So usually I find a way to get people more in the territory is I ask them, what's happening for you emotionally right now? I
feel like I need to write that down. That's a great way of saying that.
Something I've learned over time. The other thing I'll do is I'll wait for a moment when I think there might be an emotion that's emerging for them. They might, be starting to shed tears. Their voice might crack a little bit. They might be getting a little anxious. They might be getting a little annoyed. I mean, these are things that as a therapist, I'm very attuned to.
Right.
So I'll wait for that moment and I'll say, so it looks like you might be a little bit frustrated right now. Is that accurate? Sometimes there's a little bit of, leading the witness.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll say, what's happening for you emotionally right now? Mm-hmm. And, over time, it really depends. And we'll introduce things like the core emotions, mad, sad, glad, afraid, scared, right? And then sometimes I'll talk some people that might be having some emotions, but that might not be on board with this whole emotion thing. I'll explain the function of emotions in relationships.
So talk more about that, because I can imagine if I'm a listener or viewer and not a therapist, I'm thinking to myself, why? Why is that important?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of reasons that we have, as humans, emotions have evolved, right, over time, why we have them, right? I think, certainly emotions like fear, survival instinct, right? If there's a saber-toothed tiger that's gonna, ready to jump on us, it's a good idea to run away.
Yes.
Right? So that's very, evolutionary. But I think, things like, the more vulnerable emotions like sadness and loneliness, hurt, right? And even anger. They're actually they can be very relational. And I think most of at least in our, 2017, our culture is I think the primary value of emotions is that's what enables us to have relationships. And I think when I'm working with couples and groups, I explain to people, most people, because of the kind of logical, positivist world we live in, they approach relationships the same way they might approach, their work or fixing a car or making a recipe, which is the logical way. But really, the way relationships work, it's totally based on emotions and the unconscious, 100%. So I'm very much of a pragmatist, right? And I explain it to people. It's like, that's the way if you want your marriage, if you want your relationship with your kid to get better, you better start feeling and speaking about your emotions, or else it's not going to work.
Because it's the fastest or best way to get to what might be unconscious, in a way, in a sense.
No, not really.
Okay.
No, I think it's. I mean, that's true, but there's other ways to get to the unconscious. But I think that's what relationships thrive on. That is the currency of connection. Right, that's what most of us want, is to feel connected to our partner, to people in our lives, right? And depending on who they are, we want to feel, different degrees of closeness and at different times. But closeness and distance are the function of emotions, how we're feeling inside and how we're feeling towards the other person.
So again, I think if I'm listening and I'm not a therapist, I'm thinking, how does my anger or my hurt or my loneliness help me in any way?
Yeah, well, let's start with loneliness, right? If we're lonely, that's a pretty good idea. It's a cue, right? Emotions, in one way, are sort of cues to help us understand our world and the world that we live in,
yes.
right? So if I'm feeling lonely, that's probably a good indication that I might want some company, right? And if I'm married and I'm lonely, right, that might mean that I just need to seek out my partner, and maybe I need a hug. But maybe there's something larger going on here. Maybe I'm in this marriage, in this relationship, where I never really feel met. I never really feel seen. I never really feel understood. And I might feel lonely, but I might feel mad about that, right? I might feel hurt. You'd rather be out with your friends than spending time with me, right? That's going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And you can't, you as my partner can't fix that, can't help me with that. Unless you know about it.
Yeah.
Which is why it's not enough just to have feelings, right? But we have to put words to them.
So that being one of the main ways therapy can help, and help a couple.
That's the way I work. It's the way I work with people.
Yeah.
I work mostly helping people do something that's called progressive emotional communication.
Yeah.
And that the idea behind that is, I'm going to say what I'm feeling: mad, sad, glad, afraid, alone, lonely, hurt. Right, and a little bit about it, so that then you can respond and tell me how that's affecting you. Sometimes it might not be, pleasant, right? If I'm really mad at you,
yes,
right. But anger, when expressed and used constructively, which we don't have a lot of good examples for in our culture or in most of the families we grew up in, is actually very relational.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be, but usually it's very destructive. So that's a lot of my work. Is helping people be able to express their anger and their aggression constructively towards their partner.
Oh, you just used a word that I really want to talk about.
Which is?
Aggression.
Yes, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, is it?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Let's talk about aggression.
Yes.
It's exciting to talk to somebody about it because it's one of those topics that we don't learn about, or I didn't learn about in school. I don't know any trainings that I've been to where that was a topic. I've learned from it from my own therapy. So talk about how important it is to be talking with clients about aggression.
Oh, it is essential. I mean, I think in relationships, all human relationships, it is typically the biggest problem. Either aggression, people throw things, they shoot each other, right? They hurt each other physically, right? They yell, they scream, right? But also a lot of people do is they hold it in, right?
Internalized.
And they internalize it, and that leads to another set of problems, right? And depending on how you look at the world, I think the biggest problem we have in the world and in our relationships is aggression, either not being able to express it or expressing it destructively. Right. Either by going into action, throwing things, yelling. Yelling is a kind of action. Screaming, slamming doors, leaving the house.
Yes.
Right. All of those things. Road rage. And one of the first things I do with people when I start working with aggression is I explain the difference between anger and aggression.
Oh.
Right.
Again, I'm having that. I wish I had a pen. Well, that's a good one.
Supposedly, this is being taped, so you can go back and watch this.
True.
Yeah. So what I explain to people, and this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it does help people understand, right? Anger is the emotion that we feel inside, right? I'm mad, right? The aggression is how we act on it.
It's acting it out.
It's acting it out in some way,
Yeah.
which can mean anything from raising your voice to throwing things to hitting somebody to everything in between.
Yeah.
Right? And most people, they experience those two things as one and the same. And they don't, they have no, the idea of being able to be angry and have a choice in the moment is very new and very liberating for people.
It is. It's almost relieving, I have experienced for people.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the work I do with people, allowing people to have their difficult feelings. Because I mean, anger, especially when I like to think of most emotions on a scale of 1 to 10, right? And anger, when you're in the 1, 2, 3 range, it's kind of irritation, frustration, annoyance, that kind of thing. 5, 6, 4 is kind of anger, but then when you get into rage, being irate. 7, 8, 9, those 9, 10, it's hard in those moments, how to deal with it in a way. And that's why usually can take a while in therapy to work with it, to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Is another way of wording what you're saying, tolerating being in that space of 8, 9, or 10? But just learning in the office that I can be at a 9.
And not really, and not tolerate it, not act out. That's hard. I mean,
well, what this makes me think about is how useful it can be to use yourself to help a client regulate that state. That if a client can talk about their anger at me, then we're really getting some. Then it gets exciting.
Yeah, that tends to be more advanced work.
Yeah.
With people is talking about anger towards the therapist.
Yeah.
But a lot of my training is to help me be more open and encourage my clients' anger towards me when I don't always do the right thing. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And it's kind of part of life. And encourage people to be free expressing their anger towards me. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I've certainly been a client who felt it difficult to express anger towards my therapist, but once I got it as a client, it was like every time I want to come in and tell you how much I hate you. It's so relieving that I have this person that I can be angry at, and they're still going to be there every week.
Yeah, and you just said something really important that I want to kind of springboard off
of,
which is the hate part.
Let's
which is
hate.
The hate, which is another one of my favorite topics, right? Because hate is very difficult for people because it tends to be very black and white. Is once for most people, hate is not a feeling in the moment, but it's a state of where I've put you in this box where I hate you. Right, and that's it. We're done. Right, our relationship is over.
You have become all of that. Instead of just this one piece of you that I don't like. You are everything.
Everything, and
that's bad.
And you're in the bad bucket. And I can't like you. I can't love you. I can't care about you. Right, and the reality is in relationships, marriages, families, is you really can't have love without hate. Right? If I'm going to really love you and really care about you, there are going to be times when you're going to be so irritating to me, I'm going to hate you. Right? And that's another.
So liberating.
Yes, it's very liberating, but it's a very alien concept to most people. And so we have to work a lot in the room. Group is very helpful for that. When there's not.
Say more about that. How it can be helpful.
Well, the nice thing about group is people. And I'm talking, the type of groups I'm talking about are not couples groups, right? I'm talking about groups with individuals that aren't related, that don't have any or much contact outside of the group room. So that basically you're seeing this person for 90 minutes a week, right? And you get to go home to your own life. So the nature of your relationship in group is it's confined to the group room. And over time, and the types of groups I run are long-term interpersonal process groups where people actually develop, at first it seems a little bit artificial, but eventually you develop relationships with the people in the room because everybody is being vulnerable. They're talking about their most private selves in ways that most people don't talk about outside of group. and you actually start caring about your fellow group members, which is wonderful, and they become a source of support, but they also become a source of irritation and annoyance. And you actually, one of the things that happens is the types of relationships that you have and your relationship patterns that happen outside the room with family, friends, etc. They come into the room in those relationships, and they're reenacted because people are people, and there's always going to be someone in group that reminds you eventually of your wife or husband or mother or father or aspects, brother or sister. And some of those same feelings come up, and you get to work on them in the room.
So like as an example, if you have a pattern in your life of feeling hopeless about a situation, then if there's a particular relationship in group, and then you just immediately go to hopeless.
Right, because that's your pattern. You're bringing it with you. You're being yourself. You're showing up as yourself.
Yeah, then you have an opportunity to talk about that and
deal with it. Get
feedback from how that affects others.
Work on it constructively with other people that are working on themselves.
Yeah.
Right. It's a wonderful environment.
And with therapists in the room, right?
Yeah. One or two therapists in the room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a question I had for you: is how your perspective of therapy dovetails with group, and how those two, for you, because I know you, are so connected, or so important to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think for me,
I didn't say it very well.
You said it really well, Jennifer.
But you get it.
Said it great. I totally get it. I think, and also my individual work with my clients totally overlaps with that also. I think for the way my practice works, some of my colleagues are like this. I suspect there are other therapists that are not like this, but because of the way I market myself and the type of work that I want to do, 100% of the work that I do with people is about relationships. 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If people have issues at work, it's about the relationship with their boss, their coworkers, right?
Yeah.
If it's couples work, it's the relationship with their spouse,
Yeah.
right? And in group,
which is really their relationship with mom and dad, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It can be. I mean, yes. Aspects of that show up.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when people come into therapy, they don't see that.
Right.
They don't know that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when people are in a lot of distress with their partner, there might be an affair, some kind of infidelity, alcoholism, gambling, all kinds of problems.
Right.
Introducing this idea that, the fact that
you did marry your mother.
You married your mother. It's not usually very helpful.
Yeah.
So I'll tend to wait on that. But the other aspect to that is the way I work with people is to know that everything that we do is informed by our history. And so even when people are talking about the present moment, they're actually also talking and they're telling us about their history, right? And oftentimes especially when people talk about their emotions, right, it's a way to implicitly, meaning when I'm saying I'm angry at you, I might not be explicitly talking about how you exactly remind me of something my mom does, but if it's the same thing and I'm talking about how I'm feeling towards you, it actually works to heal both of those things. It's kind of one of the magical things about talking about your emotions.
Do you say that explicitly with clients?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
So part of the way I work, and this is different than a lot of therapists, I tend not to do a lot of psychoeducation. I don't exactly tell people what I'm doing, what they're going through.
Okay.
I try not to do too much teaching, right? Because really what I'm trying to help people do is to feel their emotions inside and to talk about them in the room. Right? Whether it's in individual therapy, whether it's in couples therapy, or whether it's in group.
Yeah.
And the reason I do all of those three different modalities is because there's things that you can do in individual therapy that don't happen very well in couples therapy or group. Right? In individual therapy, what we're working on is helping people just say everything. A place where they can say anything that's on their mind.
Well, also in group.
No, not in group. The idea behind group, and the way I work, is not to say everything.
Okay.
Because, for instance, if I don't know, I think you're really unattractive, right? And I think you're kind of ugly, right? That's actually an attack, and that actually is a really great way to alienate other people.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And that's
Gotcha.
actually the kind of thing we help people to not say in group.
Okay, that helps.
Right.
Whereas an individual, you can
say
"She is
anything.
so ugly."
Yeah. Or if you know, even to say something to your therapist is you're really ugly. You're an ugly person. And with me, I'd say, well, that's wonderful that you're telling me that. Tell me more about how you think I'm ugly.
Yes.
Right. And that's my job, you know, to be open to everybody's feelings towards me.
Yes.
But not so much in group, and definitely not in couples.
Definitely not in couples. No.
And so a lot of the work in individual therapy is to people to be able to say everything over time as much as they can, but also to know what they're feeling inside, right?
Yeah.
That's really what you're working on in individual therapy. In group, you're helping people talk about what's going on, talk about their lives, what's going on in their lives, but also talk, yes, about what's happening inside, but really talk about feelings towards the other person. And that's where you get into the love and hate, or one of the
aggression.
Aggression. People have a hard time with those words, love and hate, especially when they don't know someone very well. So I like to talk about like yum and yuck, right?
Yes.
I'm feeling very yum towards you, or very yuck, or I'm feeling close to you, I'm feeling warmly towards you, I want to be farther away from you, I want to be closer. All ways to talk about what I'm feeling towards, right?
So,
and that's a lot of the work we do in group.
Yeah. So do you, in terms of helping an individual or a couple client that you have enter a group, would you talk to them about that, or how would you talk to them when you think that this might be a good fit? Or do you, and another question, I guess, is do you think group is a good fit for everyone? Which I can imagine.
Yes, I do. I think everybody needs to be in a group. I think group is so helpful. I think it's very supportive. I think it's...
It can be.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. Good point. So one of the differences between group therapy and something like a support group or AA, right, is that group is not, it's not there just to support people.
No.
And oftentimes, as you know, as someone that is in regular group therapy, it can be very challenging.
Yes.
Right, especially when you're not getting the type of support that you might want, right? Which is unfortunately the way a lot of us grew up in our families, right? We grew up not feeling supported, feeling ostracized, right? Feeling like the black sheep, right? And so, like I said earlier, we're going to replicate that in the group, right? We're going to do what we do, because since it's something we might not like, but it's something we're familiar with.
Especially, no matter what your history is, going from seeing somebody individually to the group room.
Yeah, that's a whole.
That transition.
That transition is it's challenging.
Yeah.
Right, and so ideally, it's not an either or question, right? A lot of people see individual or group as either or, and while when someone enters a group, it might make sense to cut back on individual. I don't like to cut back completely, and even if somebody is a client of another therapist that might be referred to me for group, which happens a lot, I do like to see them once a month or something like that, so they can check in, especially in the beginning, check in about how group is for them, because like you said, it is challenging.
And get to have you individually. Like have you all to themselves. That people tend to need that.
I
can't imagine though this is the way you talk to clients about it.
No.
Yeah. So how do you?
Usually the way I talk to them is when at some point someone will say something. One of their issues around their history or their issue with their in their marriage that I think might be really helped in group, right? I'm drawing a blank here as an example, but somewhere, for instance, where we're like, okay, perfect example. They go with their partner to a party, right? And their partner might be super extroverted, and the life of the party. And this person might feel extremely ostracized. They don't have anybody to talk to. They feel very lonely, awkward, anxious. Some of that is their partner might not be supportive enough with them. But some of it is that's just the way they are in groups. Right? So I might say that. It's like, I'm having an interesting thought right now. We haven't talked about this yet, but I don't know if you know this, but I'm a group therapist and I run some groups. And I am getting this idea that you might be a good candidate for a group and that maybe we should start talking about that.
So then when the client asks, so what is that?
Well, most, and depending. Sometimes people will say, what I'll usually say is when I start exploring with people, I'll say, well, there's a lot of stereotypes about, groups. What do you know about group therapy?
Oh.
Right?
Great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes people say, oh yeah, I was in a group a couple years ago.
Right.
It was amazing. And I've always wanted to join a group. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Dave. And then I'm like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
This is going to be great. So, and that's one thing, but sometimes
but
people.
most of the time it's,
time it's, yeah, I've seen it on TV or, this dates me, but the Bob Newhart show. You see a lot of group therapy. You see a lot of, on some of these rehab shows.
Yeah.
You see a lot of examples of some not such great group therapy.
Yes.
Because what I tell people is good therapy does not make good TV. So most of what you're going to see on TV is not really about what happens most of the time in groups. Sometimes group gets pretty lively and would probably make good TV, but it is confidential, right? That's one of the things we work on in group is we have a set of agreements that people agree to, and one of which is confidentiality. One of which is the idea of putting your thoughts and feelings into words, not into action, and the intention to come every week and to stay for the whole session, things like that. And oftentimes people, don't follow the agreements exactly, and we talk about that in group, and we learn about people when they, people have authority issues and break rules, or they might want to be late for some reason, or they just might be late, right? And that's one of the aspects is if somebody, most of us are not super punctual, some of us are, but most of us have a tendency, oftentimes, to be late, and then people are going to be late.
Especially to therapy.
Especially to therapy, when they might not want to come.
Yes.
And that starts showing up in the group room, and we can talk about it, right? People say, it's interesting that you've been 10 minutes late every week this month. What's going on?
Yeah.
We get to explore it, understand it, learn about it, and that's one of the great things about group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking a lot about group. Let's talk also about couples work.
Yes. That's what most people, when most people enter my practice.
Okay.
Not everybody.
It's as a couple.
Is as a couple.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people come for individual work to work on their relationships, but the majority of people come as couples. Yeah. Yeah.
So talk about how you work with couples and why you like it and.
Yeah. Why I like it. That's a really great question.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, therapists either love it or they hate it.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Right. And the thing, there's a lot of reasons why therapists don't like it, because they have to deal. You get a lot of very
uncomfortable
emotions in the room that aren't always being expressed, aren't always being felt. And as a therapist, we're going to feel all that.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea is over time to help our couples talk about that, the feelings they're having either in themselves, towards their partner, towards the therapist, towards their kids.
Yes.
Right? But it's something that we have to tolerate and hold a lot because, most couples, what the research shows is that most couples, when they actually come to therapy, they've been dealing with these problems for 6 or 7 years already.
Right.
And so there's a lot going on,
right?
And, I work with a lot of people that have been married for a couple years, a lot of people, through the gamut, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right, that have been married.
Right.
And sometimes people have been to therapy a number of times. That's probably pretty common for me. Most people that have come...
Yeah, you're the third or fourth.
Therapist. And the way I work with people is to help them to start talking about their emotions, what they're feeling inside, and what they're feeling towards their partner. And the way I work with people, it doesn't take long before when I encourage people to talk about what's going on in their lives, what's bugging them about their partner, what's not going well in the marriage. Then they'll start talking and they'll start having some emotions, and then we start working with the emotions in the moment and understanding how their emotions affect them and how their expression of emotion affects their partner.
So maybe you don't want to answer this question, and if you don't, we can just delete this part.
That's a great. Now you really got me interested.
Well, why do you like it? Because it is it can bring up so many uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot going on in the room. It can be exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's difficult.
Yes.
I do think there aren't because it's so difficult, and I think there's some good training out there, but you really have to be willing to get in there and feel a lot. And it's difficult. So a lot of therapy,
and not get induced to problem solve. This is one of my challenges.
Yes. So
to just stay at the level of emotion.
Of emotions
instead of,
and try and it takes. I mean, it takes a while to resist the urge to problem solve. Right, and to stay with the emotions. But I have this new idea that I have just developed in the past few weeks around this exact issue. So I'll share it with you, which is one of the ways that we have to talk about problem solving as therapists is we talk about our therapeutic zeal, right? Is we have this excitement, right? This zeal, this desire, because we tend to be pretty empathetic and caring people, right? And our clients come to us because they have problems, and we want to solve their problems. Right, and they want us to solve their problems. And the way I work is, while I want to help people solve their problems, I see their problems as a way to understand them and to understand their lives. And so, rather than solving their problems, I want to understand them and understand their problems. And so, when we talk about therapeutic zeal, we talk about this, as you would say, this desire, this zeal, this enthusiasm we have for solving problems, right? Because we get to feel smart, we get to feel competent.
And they want that. And then we feel like, oh, look how great I am, because you feel like I just solved a problem, and aren't I great?
Aren't I great? Right? You get to look up to me, and I get to feel good. And that can be, I mean, that's helpful to people.
Seductive.
It's seductive, but ultimately, I think it's not helpful. Because it puts us in a position of being sort of their go-to to solve the problem, rather than to actually help them to develop the resources internally to solve their problem with our help. Right? And so what I have started to do is to take my therapeutic zeal and turn it into exploratory zeal. Is rather than my my excitement.
I need my pen again.
Yes.
Exploratory
well, this
zeal.
This is my latest stuff. This is my best stuff right now. You're getting the latest. Dave's latest ideas.
That could be its own podcast.
Yes. How to learn exploratory zeal, which is when you actually can sort of step back and get very interested in somebody's problem as a way to understand them, right? And to be less concerned with the smart things that you're going to say, right? You'll be amazed at what they'll say. It's unbelievable, because what I find is when I'm talking to someone and I'm really in that zone where I'm just listening and exploring with them, and with them, I kind of think about it as one of the ways to think about it is sort of grabbing them by the hand and taking a walk with them in their mind, right? You just want to walk around their mind a little bit with them together. You're doing it together, and I'm helping, right? I'm not just expecting them just to talk. I'm helping them, prompting them. Because I'm interested. I have a zeal for learning about people. And so what I found is if I think of something really super smart to say, and I just like zip it for a little bit and congratulate myself for how brilliant my insight is, and enjoy my brilliance in the moment, but save it for later, I'll often find a few minutes later they'll say it. Without any prompting from me. And so I'm like, oh, cool.
Like unconscious communication, maybe,
Yeah, it's what Alan Shore calls left brain to left brain communication.
Yeah.
And is it them? Is it you? Is it you thinking it? Is it them thinking it? Who knows?
Right.
Who really knows? But it's when you kind of really explore with them, they can have those realizations.
I can imagine as a client, you taking that stance would really feel like being seen and really gotten, and like that could feel really good. I can also imagine though that could also raise people's defenses because you're so exposed, because you are being so seen and felt
and that's why I go very slow. I go very slowly.
I
go slowly. I go slowly with people, and sometimes people they know what people know. One of the things I've learned is to trust people when they're either explicitly or implicitly when they've had enough.
Slowing down.
And if I start to get the idea that someone might have enough of that, I'll ask.
Oh.
And if they say, yes, I've had enough, then okay,
Yeah.
I've had enough.
Okay.
And we'll change the subject.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Talk about the weather or where they're going to go eat next or restaurants in the area or
Yeah.
something. Get them, put back together again so they can go out and have their lives.
Speaking of changing the subject, I would like to do that.
Wonderful.
Is there anything else about zeal, zeal for enthusiasm that you would like to talk about?
No,
Okay.
I think I've said, unless you want to know anything else, I've said enough.
Okay. So what I really want to talk, the juicy thing I want to talk about is narcissism.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about that.
let's talk about narcissism.
And we may or may not mention Donald Trump.
Well, it's hard to talk about narcissism these days without talking about Donald Trump, right?
Yes.
He is so much in the news, and a lot of therapists and non-therapists like to label him.
Yes, right. So because of that, there's so much more information and discussion out there about narcissism.
And misinformation.
Yeah, a lot, right?
Yes.
That I'm hearing it more and more from people using that term and just real comfort and a feeling of knowledge and familiarity about that term, you know, about what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to talk with you about, because I know a little bit about the way you work and about the way you think about this, it is the idea of a spectrum when it comes to narcissism.
And
so
the way I work with people is I typically don't like to diagnose people. I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes for insurance we have to give some kind of diagnosis. That's another story.
Yes.
But I want to I want to understand people. And I want to understand everybody's complexity. Because as human beings, we're all extremely complicated, right?
Yes.
Extremely complicated.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't see themselves as complicated, which...
I was just going to say, even the ones that don't think they are.
They are,
yeah,
they are.
Maybe especially are, yeah.
Maybe especially are. But for whatever reason, they come to think of themselves as not complicated.
Yeah.
But, just like we have, physical organs, we have heart, we have lungs, we have brain, we have a spine, right? Everybody has all these different parts of their psychological anatomy.
Yes.
Right? We all have emotions. Even if we'd like to think we don't,
right.
We all have them.
Yeah.
Right? And there's the core emotions, right? We all can be mad, we can all be sad, we might not usually, and much of the problem that people have in their relationships is not with their emotions, but their feelings about their emotions.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't like to diagnose people. But the way I like, people do have problems with narcissism, and oftentimes people come into my office and saying, this person is a narcissist, right? This person right next to me, and to me that's not that helpful, because it's a type of labeling. It's actually a type of name calling. Yeah. Right. And when we think about these diagnoses like narcissistic personality disorder, right? This idea of narcissism, it was a term coined by Freud over 100 years ago, based on the myth of Narcissus, who looked into this pond and saw his own reflection and fell in love with it. And I think it's a bit of a mistake to think about a narcissist as being in love with themselves, right? Because love is actually a very relational feeling. And the feeling we get when we have loving feelings towards someone is not the same feeling when we think of ourselves as awesome, right? Yes, it's true. Right? And even this idea about ego, being egocentric and being grandiose and being arrogant, right? That tends to be something that's very tightly associated with narcissism. And I think it's a mistake, actually, it's something that you often see, but it's often sometimes you don't. There are some very humble people that might appear that are actually pretty humble that can be very selfish or self-absorbed. Right. And that is the way I like. Because we all have those parts of us. Right. Every single one of us. Every single one of us can be selfish. That's right. And in one of the problems people have in marriages is this me versus we problem. Right. It is one of those marital problems that is unsolvable. Yeah. Right? You cannot solve it. Yep. But we do have to learn to work with it. And usually... talk about it. And talk about it. That's the way we work with it, by talking about it,
Yeah.
right? That's the way, and that's why therapy, especially this sort of exploratory therapy, is really well suited to these unsolvable problems. Because this gets back to your question earlier about how the therapist is so great at solving problems, right? Mm-hmm. It's great until you end up with an unsolvable problem,
right?
Which is really,
great point.
Which is really what therapy is uniquely suited for. It's the unsolvable problems that we have in life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've never thought about it like that. That's so true.
Yeah, that's the way and it's sort of, and that's when, and that's, if you approach therapy as a therapist by helping people solve their problems, right, you put yourself in a real bind when you get to a problem that can't be solved, right?
Yeah.
Because it creates, because you have all these expectations, and then you let the person down, and then you don't even know, as a therapist, you don't even know what to do.
Right.
Because you're screwed. I'm like, I don't know. Give me a better problem. You know, let's talk about Johnny doing his homework. I can help you with that. I can help you with that
one. I know
one.
exactly what to do.
You know, the problem about you, not thinking, you're good looking enough, or not being able to be not tall enough to be a fashion model, or not being able to be an astronaut. I can't help you with that. Sorry, So getting back to the narcissism issue, right? Which is like you said, we all have issues with becoming overly self-absorbed, right? We all have issues with getting a little too focused on me. Mm-hmm. We have also oftentimes being a little selfish, mm-hmm. right? But like you said, everything's very much on a spectrum, right? And most people, when they make the statement, you're being selfish, what they really mean is, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Because you ate that last piece of pie.
Right.
And you told me that you'd save it for me.
Yes.
And I came home, it was really late, I had a long day, I was thinking about that piece
pie
of
all
pie
damn day.
all day, and I get there, and you know what? You didn't even take the plate out of the refrigerator. Yeah. You left the plate with the saran wrap and the crumbs.
And the fork.
Yeah. And you left your dirty fork in the sink for me to clean up.
Yeah.
You really hurt my feelings. Uh-huh. And guess what? I'm furious at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so that's the conversation you're helping people have.
That's the conversation.
Instead of you're such a narcissist.
You're such a narcissist.
Yeah.
Or he's a narcissist, or she is, or you are, or I am, or.
Why do you think it's so tempting for especially therapists to diagnose Trump?
Yeah, because
it's such a seductive conversation or idea.
It is. It is. It's very seductive, and I think it's very problematic, and it really, I find it very upsetting, actually.
Okay.
I think because of a few reasons. In terms of why it's so easy, right?
He kind of makes it easy.
He kind of makes it easy, mm-hmm. right? But it's also, this is the kinds of things we think about all day, right? We have these diagnostic systems that, from my perspective, are there to help us understand our clients, right? Because human behavior is, it sort of you can sort of, the way I like to look at it is sort of symptoms clump together. They tend to come, they come with their friends, uh-huh. right? And they're sort of similar symptoms, and they tend to clump. And what we do is we take these clumps, and when we like to label them as a thing.
Yes.
But in fact, it's not really a thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, this system of sort of saying,
I couldn't agree more.
You have narcissistic personality and I don't, because you have 5 out of 9 symptoms and I have only 4.
Right.
Therefore, you are, and I'm not.
Yeah.
That misses the point completely.
Completely.
Right? It misses the fact that it is on a spectrum. And in fact, a couple years ago, they were working on a diagnostic system that put some of these traits like narcissism on a spectrum. Yeah. But unfortunately, I think the people that were doing it were a little bit narcissistic, and they thought they could ram it through this controversial issue, and they got so much blowback, they just took the old system from the DSM-4 and plunked it back into the DSM-5 unchanged. But there are some of these other systems that see these things more on a spectrum. And so getting back to your question, which is, so we have this system at our disposal, and most of us not all, but many therapists are upset that this person who seems to exemplify many of these traits that we find abhorrent, and that we spend a lot of time working with our clients to sort of take the rough edges off of and to work on, that tend to be anti-relational in our view as therapists. That he got elected, he's the most powerful person in the world. all of these problems that we think he has doesn't bother him at all.
Yes.
Right? And we get very distressed.
Yeah.
And so what we do is
because we think they should.
We think they should
Yeah.
bother him, and we don't think he should be president. And I don't think it's helpful, because I think, well, you know, if a therapist has an issue, they should, you know, use political means and, you know, write if they want to, you know, call their senators, call the White House, demonstrate, whatever. And I think this sort of name calling, which I see sort of diagnosing him, because one of the ethical aspects of being a therapist is we don't diagnose people unless they're in our office.
Right.
Right? And as far as I know, Donald Trump is not presented for therapy.
Right.
He certainly hasn't come to me.
I think it's a good bet that he's not.
For therapy, and he's not going to.
Right.
And one of the criteria for diagnosing any kind of personality disorder is that this is causing problems for the person with the disorder. Right? And as far as I can tell, he's a billionaire, and he's the most powerful guy in the world.
Yeah.
His family seems to be pretty happy.
Yeah.
People are close to him, his family, right? They don't seem to mind. In fact, they're you know, having all the spoils of his business and his political success.
Seems to be working out.
Seems to be working out, and so, you know, who am I to diagnose this guy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree that it presents this paradox, because a lot of us as therapists also don't want to pathologize people.
Yeah.
But we
except the ones we don't like.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
We don't want to pathologize people except the ones we don't like.
Going.
Then we want to then we want to call him names.
Right.
Right. And that just
Which
contributes to the splitting.
Exactly.
You know, he calls, you know, immigrants certain names. We call politicians certain names.
Right.
It's not helpful.
And it happens in marriages too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's one of the things I try to help people with, right? Even though you might think your partner is a terrible person,
right?
If they're a piece of crap, you know, lower than scum, right? That's name calling. It's a personal attack,
yeah.
Right? And one of the things that I teach couples, I teach people in group, is not to name call, right? But what am I feeling towards you right now?
Yeah.
I'm angry with you.
Yeah.
You know, use some tone, right? Not just, yes, I'm angry with you.
Yes, I'm angry.
That's not progressive emotional communication.
Yeah.
It's not an emotion.
Yeah.
If someone might say that, and I might say to them, oh, I hear that you're saying you're angry, but I'm not feeling it right now, and I'm curious about that, because your words and your tone are not matching up. Help me understand that, and then we're off.
Yeah.
Because there's always something behind it.
Yeah.
Right? There's always there. So even if they're saying the word and I'm not feeling it, and then they might say, yeah, you're right, Dave, I'm not feeling mad, right? You're right, I'm not feeling mad. I'm feeling really sad.
Yeah.
And then that will land. I'm like, oh, yeah,
I see that now.
Yeah, I see that now. Tell me about your sad.
Yeah.
And we go from there.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. It was a blast.
I'm Jennifer Bilbrey, and this has been On Our Minds, a podcast and vlog about psychotherapy in Austin, Texas. Please visit my website at jenniferbilbrey.com for more episodes and for more information. Thank you.